All right, Friday forecast time. It's Big Ten play. It's Nebraska. It's Michigan. Sean, first of all, before we look ahead to the Wolverines, let's just put a bow on the non-conference. What did you learn about this football team?
Well, I think a lot of good came out of it. Obviously, they were tested early, and they overcame it and finished the game to start. I thought that was huge against Cincinnati. They've yet to allow 100 yards passing. In fact, I believe they're the number one ranked passing defense right now in the country after 3 weeks of college football. Dylan Raiola has a lot of confidence. I thought that was key to kind of go into Big Ten play with a sky-high, confident Dylan Raiola with the receivers they have. And, Emmett Johnson, I think, has proven that he can take the workload. He's second right now in the Big Ten in terms of total carries, and they scaled him back last week against Houston Christian. I think the big questions still remain mainly around the defense. Do they have enough inside to be good on those early rundowns? Offense, my biggest question, Andy, still remains with that offense when it gets inside the deep red zone, inside the 10-yard line. It's tough. I mean, you see it in NFL games and college games, obviously in the Big Ten. Plays are not easy to execute when all the bodies are condensed in there. Nebraska has not been great in those situations.
Yeah, if nothing else, too, Nebraska has proven that they got some pretty good depth at a lot of positions, including quarterback. Let's look at Michigan. They're in a weird situation, unique situation, because they're going to be without their head coach this week.
Yeah, Sharon Moore will be serving one of his 2-game suspension. He served his first game last week. Vip Poggi will be the head coach for the Wolverines. He was the head coach at Charlotte. He's been a high school head coach before, had been with Jim Harbaugh. So he's been around the block. But then you also have Chip Lindsey, the former Troy head coach, who is their offensive coordinator. So there is experience, and Michigan's got experience in these situations. This is the second time they've dealt with this, as Harbaugh was suspended before as well.
Yeah, this is their first visit to Lincoln since that whole Connor Stallions thing a couple of years ago. Obviously, we remember Michigan blowing out Nebraska in Matt Rule's first year. Michigan's offense led by a true freshman quarterback who really likes to get out and break free, and that's where he really does some damage.
Yeah, Bryce Underwood, the former 5-star, number one ranked high school quarterback in the country. He was arguably a $3 million addition to this team. You look at him, he's a dynamic runner. He's only actually had 4 designed runs where they've called it as a run for him. Most of his damage, in fact, 96 of his 118 rush yards have been on scrambles, and these are rush yards taking away the sack plays. So the true rush yards that he gets generally are scramble plays where things break down, and that's not uncommon. When you have a young quarterback, you're not going to tell him to make 3 or 4 reads. You're going to tell him make 1, 2, go.
Yeah.
And I think Nebraska has to be ready for that, because if that secondary, which has been smothering for Nebraska, and Michigan knows that, gives him some fits in this game, he's going to have a green light to run a lot.
Yeah, the biggest test so far to keep a running quarterback under wraps. We saw it in the first game against Cincinnati. Hopefully they learn from that. Let's talk about Michigan's running back, Justice Haynes. I had it right here. Justice Haynes, 388 yards. 5th in the country. This guy's a running back. He's not just a singles hitter. This guy can hit the long ball and hit home runs.
Alabama transfer at one point, and that will be probably the best running back Nebraska's faced. They saw actually a pretty good one last week, I thought, in Zyshawn Henderson. Cincinnati had a couple of veteran backs too, a couple of weeks before that. But this will be different because you look at the Michigan offensive line, a lot of 4- and 5-star type players on that line blocking. The matchup of Nebraska's D-line versus Michigan's O-line, which the Michigan fan base will tell you the O-line is a question for them still. Who wins that battle or probably wins this game?
Yeah, whoever wins the line of scrimmage obviously is going to have the upper hand. I want to ask you, too, about Nebraska's special teams, especially the punt game. We didn't see Archie Wilson the last 2 games, other than one play, of course. But he's going to have to play a role now as Big Ten, the schedule moves forward.
Yeah, Archie Wilson, 2 straight weeks without a punt. No punts yet in Memorial Stadium. So in some ways it's kind of a surprise. Michigan's got just the 4 punts that he's shown on tape in the Cincinnati game. I think 3 of those 4 might have went out of bounds. So it's not like they have a lot to look at. So in some ways you can use Archie Wilson as a surprise because there's not a lot out there on them to study other than those 4 punts. And, more than likely you're going to be using Archie Wilson because this is going to be a hard-fought game.
How important is this in the big picture? Obviously, we think every Big Ten game is big, but this one seems to have a little extra value knowing what's at stake.
Yeah, I think this is the most important game early on in this Matt Rule tenure at Nebraska. He's had some big games, like Colorado last year was big. Indiana should have been bigger, and they got blown out. And in Bloomington with big noon kickoff and college game day there. But I think this game itself is so big for Matt Rule because they've not won 4 regular season games in a row since 2016. They have not beaten a ranked opponent since 2016 Oregon. So there's a lot of milestones this program could do that haven't really happened in close to 10 years if they're able to get a win like this against Michigan.
Well, the game is at 2:30. Michigan's just a slight favorite, but it's going to be a good one. Michigan, Nebraska, it's on CBS.